My dying brother wrote Tuesday, 4:16. Hours later, his son asked me to sign as a witness. The last thing my brother ever wrote was not my name, or his daughter's name, or even a request for water. It was a day and a time. Tuesday, 4:16. Tom printed the words on the back of a hospital meal receipt with a hand that could barely hold the pen. The letters leaned downhill, each one weaker than the last. When he finished, he folded the paper once, pushed it into my palm, and closed my fingers around it with both of his hands. Then he looked toward the door. That look frightened me more than the monitors beside his bed. My younger brother had spent 68 years meeting trouble head-on. He had faced a barn fire, 2 bad harvests, our father's temper, his wife's long illness, and a diagnosis that had reduced his future to a handful of painful weeks. I had seen him angry and afraid. I had never seen him look hunted. Tuesday at 4:16? I whispered. His eyes returned to mine. He tried to speak, but the cancer and medication had turned his voice into breath. What came out sounded like one broken syllable. Then the muscles in his jaw tightened, and he gave the smallest shake of his head. I started to ask another question, but footsteps stopped outside the room. Tom's grip tightened around my wrist. The door opened, and his son Derek walked in carrying a black leather folder. "Uncle Sam," he said, as if he were surprised to find me there. "I thought you went home." Derek Hart was 43 years old, broad-shouldered, carefully shaved, and dressed in the kind of blue suit that made men look trustworthy from across a conference table. He had our family's gray eyes and none of Tom's patience. His wife, Vanessa, followed him into the room with a paper cup of coffee and a smile that disappeared when she saw my hand closed around something. "Dad awake?" Derek asked. Tom let go of me and turned his face toward the window. I slipped the folded receipt into my shirt pocket. "For a few minutes," I said. Derek set the leather folder on the visitor's chair. "Good. There are a couple of routine things the hospice office needs before they transfer him tomorrow." He did not open the folder while I was standing beside the bed. He talked instead about medication deliveries and home nursing schedules. Vanessa adjusted the blanket over Tom's legs without asking him. They moved around that room with the confidence of people who had already decided the old man in the bed no longer had a vote. I had spent 36 years in the Bibb County Recorder's office. People imagined that meant I had lived among dusty deed books and rubber stamps. In truth, I had spent most of my working life watching what happened when a signature became more valuable than the person who made it. I knew the harmless papers from the ones people described as harmless. Derek kept one hand on that leather folder the entire time. Tom died 11 hours later. At 3:08 the next morning, a nurse named Lydia Chen called me. I was sitting in the vinyl chair beside his bed, holding the hand that had once thrown a baseball hard enough to break our mother's kitchen window. His breathing had been uneven for an hour. Then there was one long exhale, a quiet click from the pump, and no next breath. I was 72 years old, and I had believed grief would be familiar by then. Our parents were gone. My wife Ellie had died 2 winters earlier. Friends had vanished, one obituary at a time. But when Tom's hand went slack inside mine, I felt 12 years old again, standing in the rain while he ran down the road after the school bus I had missed. He had always come back for me. Even when we were angry, even when months went by without a call, some part of me had believed my little brother would be there. Lydia turned off the monitor. She gave me time before she asked whether I wanted the family called. "His daughter," I said. "Claire. Has anyone reached Claire?" The nurse checked the contact sheet. "His son is listed as primary. There's no daughter on the page I have." That was the first thing that did not fit. Claire Morgan was Tom's younger child. She lived in Augusta and worked as an elementary school librarian. She and Tom had been close after her mother died. At least they had been close until 6 months earlier, when Derek told me Claire had accused Tom of favoring him in the estate plan. According to Derek, she had stopped answering her father's calls. I had accepted that explanation because families can make cowardice sound like respect. I told myself it was none of my business. Standing beside Tom's body, I understood how convenient my silence had been. I called the number I had for Claire. It went straight to voicemail. "Honey, this is Uncle Sam. Please call me. It's about your father." I had barely ended the call when Derek entered the room. He was not wearing the blue suit now. He had on khaki pants and a quilted vest, but the leather folder was tucked under his arm. He stopped when he saw the sheet pulled to Tom's chest. For a moment, whatever else Derek had become disappeared. His face folded. He sat on the edge of the empty chair and covered his eyes with one hand. "I thought we had until morning," he said. I put a hand on his shoulder. Grief is not proof of goodness, but it is still grief. Tom had taught Derek to drive in the orchard truck. He had taken him to every high school football game, even after the boy spent most of the season on the bench. A son can love his father and still wrong him. That was one of the hardest truths I would learn. After a while, Derek stood and wiped his face. "There is one thing I need from you," he said. "It'll save us a mess with the transfer." He opened the leather folder. The top page had a title in 12-point capital letters, Affidavit of Familial Witness. "What transfer?" I asked. "Dad moved the orchard into Hart River Development last week. It was part of the succession plan. The lender wants confirmation from a disinterested family member that he was competent and acting voluntarily." "And you think that family member is me?" "You're his brother. You saw him last week. You know he had his mind." He handed me the document and pointed to a blank signature line. I did not read where his finger pointed. I read the paragraph above it. It said, "I affirmed that on Tuesday, June 9th, Thomas Edwin Hart had knowingly acknowledged and approved the conveyance of Hart Pecan Farm to Hart River Development, LLC. It said he had done so without coercion. It also said I had observed him discuss the transaction near the time of execution." Near the bottom of the second page, an attached summary identified the deed by recording number. Beside the notary acknowledgment was an execution time, 4:16 p.m. Tuesday. The paper in my shirt pocket seemed to burn against my chest. "When did you say he signed this?" I asked. "Last Tuesday, at the farm office." "Was I there?" Derek gave a patient smile. "The affidavit doesn't say you watched him put pen to paper, just that you knew he understood the succession plan. It says I observed him discuss the transaction near the time of execution. You talk to him every week." That wasn't my question. Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She had changed into a cream sweater and black trousers, clothes chosen for a morning she knew would come. Her gaze moved from my face to the affidavit. "Samuel," she said gently, "Derek has been carrying the whole burden. The farm payroll, the hospice decisions, the funeral planning. Tom wanted this settled. Then Tom's lawyer should have settled it." Derek's patience thinned. "Dad didn't want Evelyn Brooks involved. She turns everything into a 6-week process. Evelyn Brooks had handled Tom's affairs for 20 years. She had helped him buy the North Grove and had drafted the trust after Helen died. Tom complaining about her caution was believable. Tom bypassing her for a land transfer was not. I closed the folder and handed it back. "I'll read it after I sleep. The lender needs it by 9. Then the lender should have asked sooner. "Uncle Sam, this is 3 pages. You know what it says." "Yes," I said. "It says I witnessed something I did not witness." His jaw shifted. He looked so much like Tom in that instant that the resemblance hurt. "Dad trusted you," Derek said. I put my hand over my shirt pocket. "That's why I'm not signing before I understand it." I walked out of the room with my brother's last message and heard Vanessa whisper behind me, "He knows." The hallway was empty except for a cleaning cart and the pale blue light that hospitals use at night. I kept walking until I reached the elevator. Only after the doors closed did I unfold the receipt again. Tuesday, 4:16. The words were not a memory. They were a warning. Tom and I grew up on the same 140 acres Derek was trying to move into his company. Hart Pecan Farm lay 12 miles northeast of Macon, where the land softened into long green rows and red clay held the heat after sundown. Our grandfather planted the first pecan trees in 1948. Our father added a packing shed and spent the rest of his life telling everyone he had built an empire. It was not an empire. It was honest land that demanded something every day. At 16, I wanted nothing more than to leave it. Tom, 4 years younger, could tell a healthy tree by touching its bark. I went to work for the county, learned statutes and index books, married Ellie, and bought a brick house with a yard small enough to mow in 40 minutes. Tom stayed. He married Helen Mercer, expanded the irrigation pond, and turned the old roadside stand into a mail-order business that shipped pecans to 32 states. For years, our differences hardened into a quiet rivalry. He thought I had abandoned the family. I thought he used duty as an excuse to control everyone around him. We spoke at Thanksgiving and argued every spring about our father's estate. Then Helen developed ovarian cancer, and all the old grievances became too small to carry. Ellie and I drove Tom to appointments. I filled orders while he sat beside Helen through chemotherapy. When she died, he came to my house and slept in a chair because he could not bear the empty rooms at the farm. That was when we became brothers again. Derek had been 36 then, already selling high-end houses around Atlanta. Claire came home for most weekends, bringing casseroles and library books Helen was too tired to read. After the funeral, Derek proposed building a small subdivision on the farm's western pasture. Tom refused. Land only gets sold once, he told us. After that, you're just the fellow who remembers it. Derek laughed, but I saw resentment settle behind his eyes. Over the next 5 years, his projects grew larger. His social media showed ribbon cuttings, stone fireplaces, and drone footage of streets named after his children. Tom invested in one early development and lost $80,000. He never gave Derek business money again. At least, that was what I believed. I reached home a little after 4 in the morning. Ellie's wind chimes moved under the porch even though there was hardly any breeze. I stood in the kitchen with the light off and called Claire again. This time, she answered. "Uncle Sam?" Her voice was thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" "I'm sorry, honey. Your father died about an hour ago." There was no sound from her end. Then she drew in a breath so sharply I pulled the phone away from my ear. "No," she said. "No, he can't have." He went peacefully. Derek said he was stable. He said the doctors didn't want visitors. "When did he tell you that?" "Yesterday morning. I asked if I should come. He said Dad got upset whenever they mentioned me." I sat down at the kitchen table. "Claire, your name wasn't on the hospital contact sheet." "That's impossible. I'm his medical power of attorney." Derek was listed as primary. "Dad changed it?" The fear in her voice sounded like a child waiting to be told she had been disowned. "I don't know," I said, "but you need to come to Macon. You'll leave now. Drive carefully. Call me when you're close." Before she hung up, she said, "Uncle Sam, I didn't stop talking to him." I looked at the dark window over my sink and saw my own gray reflection. "Derek told me you did." Dad stopped answering me. Then his texts changed. He called me Caroline twice. He has never called me Caroline in his life. What did the messages say? That I had made my choice. That Derek was the only one he could rely on. I thought the medication was making him cruel. I took the folded receipt from my pocket and laid it flat on the table. "Save every message," I said. "Don't tell Derek you're coming." At 8:30, I stood outside the Bibb County Superior Court clerk's office waiting for the doors to open. Retirement had changed the lobby. The old walnut counter was gone, replaced by glass partitions and computer terminals. The brass directory I had polished with my sleeve during my first week on the job had been moved beside the elevator like a museum piece. But land records are land records. They may move from leather books to databases, but they still tell the same human story. Who owned what, who promised it, and who lied. I logged into the public terminal and searched Thomas Edwin Hart. The first result was recorded at 10:02 the previous Wednesday morning. It was a limited warranty deed conveying Hart Pecan Farm, including the packing house, irrigation rights, and our grandfather's original 80 acres, to Hart River Development, LLC. The stated consideration was $10 and other value. The second filing was a security deed from Hart River Development to Piedmont Community Bank for $3.2 million. I read both documents twice. Tom's signature looked right from a distance. Up close, the T started too carefully, as if someone had practiced it. The line was smooth where Tom's hand should have trembled. The notary block stated that Thomas had personally appeared before Melanie Avery at the farm office on Tuesday, June 9th. Next to her seal, someone had typed 4:16 p.m. I wrote down the recording numbers and printed certified copies. Sam Hart? I turned and saw Joy Wallace standing behind the counter. She had been a junior indexing clerk when I retired. Now she wore the clerk's silver name badge and had more gray in her hair than I remembered. "I heard about Tom," she said. "I'm so sorry. Thank you." Her eyes dropped to the documents in my hand. She had spent enough years in that building to recognize trouble without being invited into it. "Everything all right?" "I hope so." I paid for the copies and did not ask her to search anything that was not public. Old privileges become abuses when retired men convince themselves they are still entitled to them. Outside, the June heat had already begun rising from the pavement. I sat in my truck and called Evelyn Brooks. She answered on the second ring. "Samuel, I just heard. I was going to call you. Did Tom transfer the farm to Derek last Tuesday?" Silence. "Where are you?" she asked. "Courthouse parking lot." "Do not discuss that deed with anyone. Do not sign anything. Come to my office now." "Derek already asked me to sign a witness affidavit." "Did you?" "No." Evelyn exhaled. "Then your brother may have saved the farm with a hospital receipt," she said. Evelyn's office occupied the second floor of a converted house on Orange Street. Tom used to complain that her stairs were too steep and her coffee too weak. That morning, she had neither coffee nor small talk waiting for me. She locked the door behind us, took the certified copies, and laid them beside a thick green file marked Hart, Thomas E. Evelyn was 61, with close-cropped silver hair and a way of removing her glasses when she wanted a person to stop pretending. She read the deed from beginning to end. Then she pushed it away as if it smelled bad. "I did not prepare this," she said. "I did not advise it, and Tom never mentioned signing it." She opened the green file and showed me a memorandum dated 8 months earlier. Tom's actual plan placed the farm into a family trust when he died. Claire and Derek were equal beneficiaries, but neither could sell the land for 10 years. The packing business could be managed or sold if both agreed. I was named temporary trustee for 5 years, with Evelyn as successor if I could not serve. "Why didn't he tell me?" I asked. "He intended to. You were supposed to come in next Thursday." I stared at my name on the page. "He knew I didn't want to run the farm." "That's why he chose you?" "Tom said Derek wanted the land too much and Claire wanted peace too much. He needed someone who wanted neither." She turned to another note, handwritten in blue ink. "3 weeks ago, Tom called me from the hospital," she said. "He said Derek was pressuring him to guarantee a construction loan. I told him not to sign anything and offered to come to the hospital. He said he could handle his son." That sounded like Tom. Pride had always been the lock on his front door and the open window beside it. "Did he say how much?" "No. Only that Derek had overextended a project called Riverbend Landing." I pointed at the security deed. $3.2 million. "The bank may not have advanced all of it. If we notify them immediately, we may be able to stop a closing or freeze undisbursed funds." "Can we void the deed?" "If the signature was forged, yes. If Tom signed while competent and without coercion, it becomes harder. Your affidavit was probably requested because the bank's title counsel saw the medical risk. He wasn't at the farm at 4:16. Can you prove that?" "He was in the hospital all day. Being admitted doesn't prove he couldn't leave, sign remotely, or acknowledge an earlier signature. We need the medical timeline, visitor logs, and whoever supposedly notarized it." I unfolded Tom's note and placed it on her desk. For the first time that morning, Evelyn looked shaken. "He gave you this before Derek entered the room?" "Yes." "Who else saw him write it?" "No one. Lydia Chen may have seen the paper afterward, but I put it in my pocket." "Keep it in a plastic sleeve. Do not write on it. Fold it again, or let Derek know you have it. He may already know." I told her what Vanessa had whispered outside the hospital room. Evelyn put her glasses back on. "Then we move before they do." By noon, she had sent written notices to Piedmont Community Bank and the title company stating that the grantor had died, the deed was disputed, and a potential elder exploitation claim was under review. She filed a notice against the property that would warn any buyer or lender not to rely on the recorded transfer. She also called the hospital's legal office. That call revealed a second document. 2 weeks earlier, Derek had presented a durable power of attorney, naming himself as Tom's financial agent and primary healthcare representative. It purported to revoke Claire's authority. Melanie Avery had notarized that paper too. "Who is she?" I asked. Evelyn searched the state notary database. "Commissioned in Fulton County. Business address is the same as Hart River Development. She works for Derek, apparently." "Can a Fulton County notary act here?" "Statewide, yes. Employment alone doesn't invalidate the act, but it gives us a place to start." My phone rang. Claire was 30 minutes from Macon. "Tell her to meet us at the hospital," Evelyn said. "As Tom's child and prior medical agent, she can request a review. It will still take time, but the hospital can preserve the records now." Claire was waiting in the parking deck when we arrived. She climbed out of her car before I had stopped moving. She was 39, small like her mother, with dark hair pulled into a loose knot and yesterday's clothes wrinkled from the drive. For half a second she stood beside my truck looking at me. Then she crossed the space between us and pressed her face against my shoulder. "I should have come anyway," she said. "You were told not to." I knew Derek lied about little things. I didn't think he would lie about this. "Neither did I," she cried without making much sound. I held her and remembered her at 7 years old, carrying a basket under the pecan trees while Tom pretended not to notice she was eating more than she collected. Inside the hospital, a patient advocate led us to a conference room. Evelyn did most of the talking. Claire provided copies of her original healthcare proxy and asked the hospital to preserve all records, visitor entries, security video, and documents presented by Derek. The advocate was careful not to admit anything. Hospitals train people to speak in sentences without edges. "There was one nurse with him Tuesday afternoon," I said. "Lydia Chen." The advocate typed the name. "We will preserve her notes." Claire opened her phone and showed us the messages she believed came from Tom. The early ones sounded like him. He used too many commas and never capitalized OK. Then, 6 weeks earlier, the style changed. "You made your choice, Caroline. Give me space." The next message read, "Derek is the only one acting like family right now." The third said, "Do not come to the hospital. It raises my blood pressure." "He called you Claire from the day you were born," I said. "Mama named me Caroline, but Dad said it was too formal." Evelyn asked Claire to export the messages and email them to her. "Did you ever speak to him directly after these began?" "Twice. Both calls lasted less than a minute. Derek answered Dad's phone and said he was too tired. Once I heard Dad in the background saying my name. Derek told me I was upsetting him and hung up." "Why didn't you call Samuel?" Evelyn asked. Claire looked at me with embarrassment. "Derek said Uncle Sam agreed I should stay away." I felt heat rise into my face. Derek had used my silence as evidence. "I never said that," I told her. "But I should have called you myself. I let him carry messages between people who loved each other." Claire wiped her cheeks. "So did I." Before we left, I asked to speak with Lydia. The hospital would not permit her to discuss Tom's care without authorization, but the patient advocate agreed to ask if she remembered anything unusual about Tuesday afternoon. An hour later, while we sat in the cafeteria, the advocate returned. "Ms. Chen documented that Mr. Hart underwent a celiac plexus block on Tuesday," she said. "He returned to his room shortly before 4 and remained under post-procedure monitoring." "Would he have been alert at 4:16? Evelyn asked. "I can't offer a medical conclusion. The record will show his medications and observations." "Did he leave the room?" "No." There it was. Not proof of everything, but proof of one lie. At 4:16 on Tuesday, my brother had not appeared before a notary in the farm office. He had been in a hospital bed 7 miles away, recovering from a procedure, while his son was registered as his visitor. Tom had remembered the time because something had happened in that room. We found Derek in the funeral home that afternoon, choosing a walnut casket from a row of polished samples. He looked up when Claire entered the arrangement room, and all color left his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked. She stopped beside me. "My father died. You didn't answer his calls for 6 months. You told me not to come." Derek glanced at the funeral director, a gentleman who immediately discovered something important on the other side of the room. "This isn't the place," Derek said. "You made sure I wasn't at the hospital. Where is the place?" Vanessa rose from the sofa. "Claire, everyone is in shock. We can sort out misunderstandings after the service." "Was it a misunderstanding when Dad's phone called me Caroline?" Derek's expression hardened. "Dad dictated those messages." "Then why did he ask for me while you hung up?" "Because he was confused. He was dying, Claire. You weren't there. You have no idea what the last month was like." Claire flinched. He had found the right knife and used it quickly. I stepped between them. "She is here now." Derek turned to me. "And whose doing is that?" "Mine." His eyes dropped briefly to my shirt pocket, though the receipt was now sealed in an envelope at Evelyn's office. "Did you review the affidavit?" he asked. I reviewed the deed. The room became still. Vanessa sat down again. "You had no right," Derek said. "It is a public record. Dad transferred the farm to secure its future. Your company borrowed against it. My company is the future. Pecans barely cover payroll. Riverbend will multiply the value of the land. Your father was in a hospital bed at the time. The deed says he appeared at the farm office. Derek did not blink. The acknowledgment time was entered incorrectly. He answered too fast. Then why did you need me to swear he discussed it near the time of execution? Because the bank is cautious. Because Dad was sick. Because paperwork is never perfect. You told the hospital you had his power of attorney. He gave it to me, Claire said. After revoking mine without telling me? He did tell you. You didn't want to hear it. Derek picked up the casket brochure and tapped it against his palm. Grief, anger, and calculation passed across his face in layers. I buried myself keeping this family together, he said. I paid bills. I dealt with doctors. I sat through nights neither of you bothered to see. Now you show up after he's dead and act like I'm robbing him? There was enough truth in his speech to make it dangerous. He had been there. He had handled the unpleasant hours, cleaned, spilled medicine, and answered calls at midnight. Claire had been kept away, but I had not. I lived 20 minutes from the hospital. I visited, then went home while Derek stayed. Duty can become a receipt people carry in their pocket, adding every sacrifice until they believe the world owes them whatever they decide to take. We will plan the funeral together, I said. Nothing about the property gets discussed without Evelyn Brooks. Evelyn doesn't represent Heart River Development. No, I said. She represents the man who died this morning. Derek walked past me and left. Vanessa followed, but not before she looked at Claire. He tried to call you, she said softly. Who did? Claire asked. My father or your husband? Vanessa had no answer. Tom's funeral took place 3 days later at the red brick Methodist church our mother had attended for 58 years. The sanctuary smelled of lilies and old hymnals. More than 200 people came. Growers, customers, former employees, nurses, neighbors, men who had bought their first tractor part from Tom, and women who remembered Helen packing school lunches at the fellowship hall. Derek delivered the eulogy. He spoke beautifully. He described Tom waking before dawn, teaching him to graft a pecan limb, and saying that a man's name should be worth more than his property. People cried. I cried too, because every story was true. That is what made the rest so difficult. Derek was not a stranger who had entered our family with a scheme. He was the little boy in those stories. He had simply learned to use the language of love while doing things love could not excuse. Claire sat beside me in the first pew. Derek had not included her in the printed program, but I had given her my seat next to the aisle. When the service ended, she placed one of Helen's old handkerchiefs on the casket and whispered something I could not hear. At the cemetery, Derek avoided us. Afterward, he hosted a reception at the farm. His real estate associates parked black SUVs between the pecan rows. A banner for Heart River Development had been removed from one vehicle but left a clean rectangle in the dust. He found Luis Mendoza behind the packing shed, stacking folding chairs. Luis had worked for Tom for 27 years. He was 56, compact and quiet, with hands that seemed permanently stained by soil and machine grease. His wife, Rosa, managed seasonal orders. Mr. Sam, he said, I'm sorry. So am I. He looked toward the house to make sure no one was near. Mr. Derek says the packing shed closes after this season. When did he tell you? Tuesday morning, before Mr. Tom died. Did Tom know? Luis shook his head. Mr. Tom told me last month we plant another 20 acres in the spring. Was Tom at the farm last Tuesday afternoon? No. He hadn't been here in 12 days. Was Melanie Avery here? He frowned. The notary woman from Mr. Derek's office? Yes. I saw her Monday. She came with Mrs. Vanessa. They were in the office maybe an hour. What were they doing? Door was closed. After they left, the file cabinet was open. Mr. Tom always kept it locked. I glanced at the office windows. The shades were down. Did you tell anyone? Mr. Derek said his father gave permission. I thought family business. Family business. Those two words had protected more wrongdoing than any locked door. Luis, don't remove anything from the office. Don't let anyone destroy the old records. If Derek orders you to clear it out, call me and Evelyn Brooks. He nodded. Then he reached into his pocket and gave me a small brass key. Mr. Tom gave me this before he went to hospital, he said. He told me if anything happened, give it to the person who asks about Tuesday. The key was stamped with a number, 416. For several seconds, I could only stare at it. What does it open? I asked. Luis looked toward the oldest row of trees, where the afternoon light broke into green pieces. That, he said, Mr. Tom did not tell me. I took the key to Evelyn before I showed it to Claire. Not because I distrusted her, but because grief makes people reach for answers before they know whether an answer can cut them. Evelyn examined the key under her desk lamp. Safe deposit, she said. Old style. The number could be a box or a key code. Tom used Georgia Heritage Bank. So did Helen. I remember a box listed in her probate inventory. She found the old estate file in storage. Box 416 had been jointly rented by Tom and me in 2019, during Helen's final months. My signature appeared on the access agreement. I had forgotten it completely. Back then, Tom had asked me to sign half a dozen forms while he reorganized accounts Helen had managed. He said he needed a second person who could retrieve insurance policies if he was at the hospital. I signed, received a key, and probably put it in Ellie's desk. Tom must have kept the spare. As joint renter, you can access the box, Evelyn said. But take me with you. We make an inventory before anything moves. Claire sat in the corner of Evelyn's office, reading the text messages from her father's phone again. When I told her about the key, she closed her eyes. He knew, she said. He knew Derek was doing something. He suspected, Evelyn corrected. Let's not decide what the box contains before we open it. The bank manager led us into a private viewing room at 10 the next morning. He brought a long metal box and placed it on the table. My hand shook when I turned the key. Inside were Helen's pearl earrings, 2 life insurance policies, the original deed to our parents' first 40 acres, and a stack of letters bound with a faded green ribbon. Beneath them sat a red pocket notebook, a digital voice recorder, and 3 sealed envelopes. One was addressed to Claire, one to me. The third said, for Evelyn Brooks if Derek borrows against the farm. Evelyn photographed the contents before we touched them. Then she opened the envelope bearing her name. The letter inside was dated May 18th, 3 weeks before the disputed deed. Evelyn, Derek asked me to pledge the farm for Riverbend. I refused. I will not sign a deed, mortgage, guarantee, transfer, or power of attorney in his favor. He said he would lose everything. I told him losing a development is not the same as losing your name. He has Melanie Avery preparing documents. I do not trust what they intend. Samuel is still joint on this box. The recorder contains our conversation from May 16th. Use it if my refusal is questioned. Thomas E. Hart. The signature was firm, but unmistakably Tom's. Claire made a sound somewhere between a sigh and a sob. Evelyn read the letter twice. This is not enough by itself to invalidate a later voluntary decision, she said. People can change their minds, but it is strong evidence of intent, especially combined with the false acknowledgment. I picked up the recorder. It was the little silver model Tom used to dictate order numbers while walking the groves. There were 7 audio files. The last was dated May 16th. Tom's voice came first, rough but strong enough to fill that small room. It's recording. Sit down if you're going to keep asking me the same question, Derek answered. You don't need to make this hostile. Then stop treating no like the start of a negotiation. For the next 18 minutes, we listened to a son explain why his father owed him $3.2 million worth of trust. Riverbend Landing was a 46-home development north of Atlanta. Derek had bought the land when interest rates were low and construction costs were climbing. A creek buffer had reduced the number of buildable lots. 2 investors withdrew. Contractors had filed liens. Piedmont Community Bank would refinance the project only if Derek added collateral with stable agricultural value. The farm was his last option. It doesn't mean we sell the orchard, Derek said on the recording. It sits behind the loan for 18 months. We finish phase 1, sell 12 houses, and release it. And if you don't? Tom asked. I will. That isn't an answer. Vanessa's voice joined them. Tom, you've told everyone the farm is for your children. Derek is trying to increase what it will be worth. My children don't need it increased. They need it intact. Claire doesn't even come here, Derek said. Claire knows the difference between an inheritance and an advance. A chair scraped. You invested in me before, Derek said, and I lost $80,000. You lost more than that on irrigation in 1 year. Water doesn't tell me it's almost finished and ask for another check. There was a long silence. When Derek spoke again, his voice had changed. If Riverbend fails, I lose my company. Vanessa and I lose our house. The bank comes after everything. Tom coughed several times before answering. Then come work the farm until you stand up again. I'm 43 years old. I'm not coming home to bag pecans. There are worse things than honest work. Easy for you to say. Grandpa handed you this place. He handed me debt and trees that froze 2 winters later. Derek's next words came quietly. You always planned to give it to me. Half to you, half to your sister. Protected so neither of you can gamble the dirt. So Claire gets rewarded for leaving and I get punished for building something. You are not being punished. You are being told no. The recording ended with a door slamming. None of us spoke for a while. Then Claire said, he defended me. It was not about the farm when she said it. I could hear the 6 months of false messages loosening their hold on her. Evelyn copied the audio to an evidence drive and sealed the original recorder in a bag. Tom prepared for a dispute, she said. But something must have happened Tuesday that he didn't have time or strength to document. That's why he gave Luis the key and wrote the time. Claire opened the envelope addressed to her. The letter was shorter. Claire girl, if you are reading this because I was too stubborn to fix things while I could, don't mistake silence for rejection. Derek told me you wanted distance. I told him to give you space. That may have been another mistake made by 2 proud people using one messenger. Call me before this letter ever becomes necessary. If you cannot, know that I loved you every day, including the angry ones. Dad. She pressed the page to her lips. My envelope held a single sheet. Sam, you spent your life making other men's papers tell the truth. I may need you to do it once for me. Don't save the farm because it is land. Save the family from believing a lie is the price of keeping peace. Tom. Below his name, he had added one line. And don't let Derek turn my grandchildren into collateral damage. That sentence changed what I wanted. Until then, anger had been rising in me like floodwater. I wanted Derek exposed in front of every person who had heard his beautiful eulogy. I wanted him to feel the helplessness he had created for Claire and Tom. But my brother's final instruction was not revenge. Derek had 2 children, 16-year-old Madison and 12-year-old Caleb. They loved their grandfather. They had not forged a deed or blocked their aunt's calls. Whatever came next, I could not use their future to punish their father. We returned the personal items to the box and kept only the materials Evelyn documented for the case. On the way out, the bank manager asked whether everything was all right. No, I said, but it will be honest. The first response from Piedmont Community Bank arrived that afternoon. The bank froze the undisbursed portion of the Riverbend loan pending a title investigation. Of the $3.2 million credit line, $680,000 had already been advanced to pay contractors and tax liens. The remaining funds would not move. Derek called me 6 minutes after the notice reached him. What did you do? He shouted. I was sitting in my truck outside Evelyn's office. I told the bank the deed is disputed. You just defaulted my entire project. No, I declined to support a document your father warned me about. You have no authority over Heart River Development. I have authority over my own signature. The farm already belongs to the company. Then my affidavit should not matter. He breathed heavily into the phone. In the background, I heard Vanessa saying something about a conference call. Meet me tonight, he said. Just you and me. No Evelyn. No Claire. Where? The farm office. 7 o'clock. I agreed after Evelyn advised me not to. At least let me attend, she said. He won't talk if you do. That may be safer for everyone. I need to hear what he thinks happened. She studied me. Are you going there as his uncle or as trustee of an estate? Both. Then remember that neither role makes you law enforcement. Do not accuse him of a crime. Do not threaten him. If you feel unsafe, leave. Georgia law permitted a person to record a conversation to which he was a party. Evelyn placed a small recorder in my shirt pocket and made me test it twice. At 7, the farm office was dark, except for the lamp above Tom's desk. Derek stood by the window with his tie removed and his sleeves rolled to his elbows. A bottle of bourbon and 2 glasses sat between us. Dad kept that for Christmas, I said. Dad is dead. He poured 2 fingers into each glass. I did not touch mine. You have always thought I was spoiled, he began. I have thought many things about you. Right now, I'm interested in one Tuesday. He pushed a glass toward me. The time on the deed is a clerical error. Melanie met Dad here Monday and reviewed the documents. He signed electronically Tuesday. The deed contains a wet ink signature. She brought a signature page to the hospital. Then why does her acknowledgment say he appeared before her at the farm? Because she used the template prepared Monday. Was she in Tom's hospital room at 4:16 Tuesday? Derek looked at me for 2 beats too long. I don't know the exact time. You were there. I visited my dying father every day. Did he sign the deed in front of you? He approved the transfer. That wasn't my question. He drank his bourbon. You people who spend your lives around government forms think reality happens inside the boxes. Dad said yes. Melanie put the wrong location. That doesn't change his decision. I heard his decision. Derek's glass stopped halfway to the desk. What are you talking about? May 16th. Your father recorded the conversation. He set the glass down carefully. He was paranoid from the medication. He sounded clear. And he changed his mind when he understood what would happen to my family. Did he change it freely? Yes. Then why did you tell Claire he didn't want her at the hospital? Because every time she called, he became agitated. Her name was removed from his contact sheet. He revoked her power of attorney. With Melanie Avery's stamp. Derek leaned over the desk. What do you want, Uncle Sam? The truth? No. You want to be important. Dad made you trustee and now you get to play guardian of the sacred dirt. You left this place 50 years ago. I am the one who stayed connected to the business. I am the one with a plan. Your plan puts 40 families' paychecks behind a failed subdivision. The subdivision is not failed. The bank froze it because you interfered. He opened the desk drawer and removed a typed agreement. Sign the affidavit, he said, and I'll guarantee you $250,000 when Phase 1 closes. Not from the estate. From my personal share. You can pay off your house, travel, do whatever retired men do when they stop pretending sacrifice is a personality. You are offering me money to swear your father acted voluntarily. I am compensating you for helping preserve his plan. And if I refuse? His eyes went cold. The cottage you live in at the farm during harvest belongs to Heart River now. Luis and Rosa work for Heart River. The trust has no land to manage. You can drag this through court, spend every dollar Dad left, and watch the bank take the orchard anyway. Or you can help me finish what he signed. I stood. Your father gave me one instruction about you. Derek's face changed. What instruction? Not to turn your children into collateral damage. For the first time, shame reached him. It did not stay long. Madison and Caleb are exactly why I need Riverbend to survive. No, they are why you need to stop. I left the bourbon untouched and walked outside. The pecan rows were black under a thin moon. Behind me, something struck the office wall and shattered. The recording was clear. It did not prove Derek forged the deed, but it proved he offered money for my affidavit and threatened the farm employees if I refused. Evelyn sent a copy to the bank's counsel the next morning. By noon, Derek had fired Luis and Rosa. He also changed the locks on the office and packing shed. Luis called me from the shoulder of the county road. Behind him, 12 seasonal workers stood beside their cars while a private security guard fastened a chain through the gate. Mr. Derek says no one enters until ownership is settled, Luis said. The harvest was less than 3 months away. Irrigation lines had to be inspected. Insect traps had to be checked. A farm can survive family hatred. It cannot survive neglect scheduled by a lawyer. Evelyn filed for emergency relief that afternoon. The hearing was set for Friday morning. On Thursday, Lydia Chen called me from a number I did not recognize. Mr. Hart, she said, I can't discuss your brother's medical record outside the formal process. I understand. But I have been asked to provide a statement. There is something I remembered after reviewing my notes. I sat down. What? At 4:12 Tuesday, his son requested privacy for a family prayer. I stepped into the hall. At 4:19, the monitor alarmed because Mr. Hart's pulse increased. When I returned, his son was holding his right wrist. His daughter-in-law had a leather folder on the tray table. Was anyone else there? A woman I did not know was near the sink. She wore a visitor badge under the name Melanie Avery. Did you see a document? No. They had closed the folder. But Mr. Hart had blue ink along the side of his right index finger. He kept trying to lift his hand toward me. Could he speak? Not clearly. I believed he was in pain. I gave medication according to the order. Her voice caught on the last sentence. You cared for him, I said. Whatever they were doing, they made sure it looked ordinary. There is one more thing. The procedure nurse documented that Mr. Hart could not reliably follow multi-step commands until 5:05 p.m. At 4:16, my brother could not reliably understand instructions, yet a deed claimed he had personally acknowledged a multi-million-dollar land transfer at a different location. Everything the note had tried to say was beginning to speak. The emergency hearing did not look like justice. It looked like 12 people waiting under fluorescent lights while lawyers carried boxes. Judge Eleanor Marsh had served on the Superior Court bench for 19 years. She knew Evelyn and remembered me from the recorder's office, which meant she was especially careful to show neither of us favor. Derek sat behind his lawyer in a charcoal suit. Vanessa sat beside him with both hands around her phone. Claire and I took the opposite table. Evelyn asked for 3 things: no further borrowing or transfer against the farm, restoration of access for essential employees, and preservation of every original document and electronic device used in preparing the deed. Derek's lawyer, Richard Vale, called the dispute a disappointed beneficiary's attempt to reverse a lawful lifetime gift. He said Tom had changed his estate plan to reward the child who cared for him. He called the incorrect location and time a scrivener's oversight. Then he played a video. Tom lay in his hospital bed, thinner than I remembered him even from the week before. Derek stood just outside the frame. "Dad," Derek's voice said, "you want me to do what is necessary to protect Hart Farm, correct?" Tom's eyes opened. "Derek," he whispered, "you want me to have what I need to finish Riverbend and keep the farm in the family?" Tom's mouth moved. The sound was faint, but the courtroom speakers caught one word: "Yes." The video ended. Claire gripped my hand under the table. Vale said the recording had been made Tuesday at 5:31 p.m., after Tom's post-procedure confusion had resolved. Mr. Hart was not coerced. He understood that his son's development would preserve the family's assets. The affidavit sought from Samuel Hart was a belt and suspenders request by cautious counsel, nothing more. Evelyn asked to see the full video and its metadata. Vale objected that the rest contained private medical care. Judge Marsh ordered the original phone preserved and a complete copy delivered under seal. She did not rule that the deed was fraudulent. Courts do not usually settle a family's history at an emergency hearing. But she found enough questions to protect the subject of the dispute. She froze the property, prohibited additional borrowing, restored Lewis as court-authorized farm custodian, and ordered both sides not to alter or destroy records. "The pecan trees will not wait for the parties to resolve their grief," she said. "The land will be maintained. No one is to treat temporary possession as proof of ownership." Derek caught me outside the courtroom. "You heard him say yes," he said. "I heard you build the question around a dying man." He knew what I meant. Then released the whole recording. His lawyer pulled him toward the elevator. That afternoon, workers reopened the gate. Luis walked the irrigation rows while Rosa inventoried the packing shed. Claire and I opened the windows in Tom's office and let the stale air out. The broken bourbon glass had been swept away, but a brown stain remained on the wall. Court-appointed technicians copied the office computer and removed the original deed files from Derek's headquarters. The process would take weeks. I had expected truth to feel like a door opening. Instead, it arrived through chain of custody forms, scheduling orders, and bills Evelyn insisted the estate could pay. In the quiet between legal steps, Claire and I began repairing what Derek had divided. She stayed in Tom's house. On her second night, she found 6 birthday cards she had mailed him in the bottom drawer of Derek's old bedroom. The envelopes had been opened, but the cards were still inside. One carried a return-to-sender sticker placed over a perfectly valid address. "He must have taken them from the mailbox," she said, "or from Tom's desk. Why keep them?" I had no answer. Perhaps Derek intended to destroy them and could not. Perhaps some part of him wanted evidence that the sister he resented had not actually abandoned their father. People often preserve the truth they are trying hardest to bury. Claire set the cards on the mantel in date order. Then she called her son, Noah, and told him the whole truth she knew. He came from Augusta the following weekend and spent Saturday helping Luis repair a clogged irrigation valve. He was 13, all elbows and serious questions. At lunch, he sat in Tom's chair without realizing it, and Claire started to cry into her iced tea. Noah stood at once. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." "Sit down," she said. "Your granddad would tell you a chair is for the living." That was the first time I heard her laugh after the funeral. Derek's children did not come. Madison sent Claire a message saying their father had forbidden them from visiting until the lawsuit ended. Claire replied only that she loved them and the farm gate was open whenever their parents allowed it. Tom's instructions stayed with me. Do not turn my grandchildren into collateral damage. The local newspaper learned about the court order. A short article described a contentious Hart family estate dispute. It mentioned the frozen development loan and quoted Derek saying a long-absent relative was exploiting an innocent paperwork error. By evening, strangers were arguing beneath the article. Half called Derek a devoted son, half called him a thief. None had sat beside Tom's bed. I stopped reading comments after a woman I had known at church for 20 years wrote that family disagreements should remain private. Privacy sounds noble until it becomes the room where the strongest person controls the story. 4 days after the hearing, Melanie Avery contacted Evelyn. She asked for a meeting at a restaurant outside Forsyth, far from Derek's office. Evelyn brought an investigator and allowed me to attend only after Melanie agreed. The woman who arrived looked nothing like the polished headshot on Hart River's website. Her blonde hair was tied under a baseball cap. She wore no makeup and kept checking the parking lot. Derek fired me this morning, she said. He says I caused the bank delay. Did you notarize Thomas Hart's deed? Evelyn asked. Melanie stared into her untouched coffee. My seal is on it. That was not the question, she swallowed. I stamped it. Where? At the hospital. What time? A little after 4 on Tuesday. The investigator placed a recorder on the table and obtained her consent before she continued. Melanie had worked as Derek's closing coordinator for 3 years. On Monday, she and Vanessa went to the farm office to collect title records and prepare the deed. Tom was not there. Derek told her he had already approved the transaction and would sign at the hospital the next day. I said I wasn't comfortable notarizing in a patient room, she told us. He said his father was fully alert and the attorney wanted it finished. Which attorney? Evelyn asked. He didn't name one. I assumed Mr. Vale. Richard Vale would later deny preparing the deed or authorizing a hospital notarization. Melanie arrived at Tom's room at 4:13. Derek had placed a signature page on the tray table. Tom's right hand rested on top of it. Was he conscious? I asked. His eyes were open sometimes. Did you ask whether he understood the deed? I asked if he wanted Derek to take care of the farm. He made a sound. What sound? I thought it was yes. Did he say yes? Evelyn asked. Melanie's eyes filled. No. Vanessa put a pen between Tom's fingers. Derek supported his wrist. According to Melanie, the first mark stopped halfway through the T. Derek became frustrated and told his father, just finish this, and we can let you rest. Vanessa then placed her hand over Tom's and moved it across the line. At 4:16, Melanie stamped the page. Why does the acknowledgment say the farm office? Evelyn asked. Derek said the document had been approved there Monday. He said location didn't matter because his father owned both places for business purposes. A hospital room was his business location? I knew it was wrong. Yet you signed. Melanie began to cry. Derek said I would lose my job and be responsible for the whole project failing. My husband was laid off in January. We have a daughter in college. I thought of Derek listing the people who depended on him, and of Tom's hand under Vanessa's. Everyone had a reason, I said. My brother was the only one not permitted a choice. Melanie covered her face. Evelyn gave her the number for independent counsel and told her to preserve her phone, emails, calendar, and notary journal. You may have criminal exposure, she said. Cooperation does not erase what happened, but destroying evidence will make it worse. Before we left, Melanie handed us a printed email. It was from Derek, sent Tuesday at 3:42 p.m. Bring the old farm acknowledgement. No hospital language. Dad is weak, so we may need to steady him. We only get one chance before Sam or Claire interferes. The word Claire hit me hardest. Derek had not isolated his sister because Tom requested peace. He had isolated her because another child in that room might have said no. Melanie's statement changed the case, but it did not end it. By the next morning, Derek said she was a disgruntled former employee, inventing a story to avoid responsibility for her own notarial error. He claimed Vanessa merely steadied the paper, not Tom's hand. The email, he said, referred to helping his father sit upright. His lawyer withdrew 2 days later. For one brief hour, I believed that meant Derek would admit what he had done. Instead, He hired a larger Atlanta firm and filed a counterclaim accusing me and Claire of interfering with contract, defaming him, and intentionally causing Riverbend's collapse. Piedmont Community Bank declared a default and demanded repayment of the $680,000 already advanced. Derek argued that if the deed fell, Tom's estate should still repay the money because the farm had benefited from the transaction. Not $1 had gone to the farm. Contractors began showing up at Riverbend and removing equipment. Buyers canceled reservations. Vanessa's white sport utility vehicle disappeared from the driveway of their Atlanta home. Rumors spread that they were selling furniture. I took no pleasure in it. That surprised me. I had imagined justice as a scale returning to balance. Up close, it looked like receptionists losing jobs, subcontractors waiting for checks, and two teenagers hearing their parents argue behind locked doors. Derek had built a machine that required the farm to keep running. When we removed what he had taken, the machine fell on everyone standing near it. One evening, Madison drove to the orchard alone. She parked outside the gate and called Claire, who brought her to Tom's house. At 16, Madison had Vanessa's height and Derek's gray eyes. She carried a backpack against her chest like a shield. "Dad says you are trying to put him in prison," she said to me. "I am trying to tell the truth about a deed." Same thing. It may become the same thing. That decision isn't mine. She looked around the kitchen. "Are we going to lose this?" "You do not own it yet, and neither do I. Your grandfather created a trust for his children. If the court enforces his plan, the land stays protected. Dad says Grandpa gave it to him." Claire brought out Tom's letter and the recording transcript. She did not show Madison Melanie's statement. A child does not need every ugly detail at once. Madison read her grandfather's words slowly. When she reached the sentence about grandchildren, her mouth tightened. "He knew Dad would do something?" "He knew your father was desperate," I said. "Desperate people sometimes cross one line and then spend all their strength insisting it moved." "Did Grandpa hate him?" "No. That is what makes this hurt." Madison unzipped her backpack and removed an old tablet. "Grandpa gave me this at Christmas," she said. "Dad tried to take it last week, so I hid it at a friend's house. It still gets Grandpa's messages because he set it up with his account." The tablet contained family photographs, farm order emails, and cloud backups from Tom's phone. Most had already been found through the formal preservation process. One had not. It was a 47-minute audio file created automatically when Tom accidentally activated a transcription application. The timestamp was Tuesday, 4:02 p.m. Madison looked at me. "Is this going to hurt Dad?" I refused to lie to her. "I don't know." "Then why should I give it to you?" "You should not give it to me. We will give the tablet to Evelyn, and she will preserve it for both sides. Your father's lawyers will receive the same file. Evidence is not a weapon that belongs to whoever finds it first." She considered that. "Will you tell him I brought it?" "Not unless the court requires it." Claire touched her niece's hand. "You are not betraying your father by refusing to hide your grandfather's voice." The audio began with hospital sounds. Wheels in the corridor, the blood pressure cuff inflating, Tom's uneven breathing. At 4:12, Lydia said she would wait outside during the family prayer. A minute later, Derek spoke. "We have to do this now," Vanessa said. "His hand is too weak." Melanie asked whether they should wait until after medication wore off. "The bank will pull it if he dies first," Derek answered. Then came the rustle of paper, Tom's strained breathing, and Vanessa saying, "Just let me help you, Dad." At 4:16, Tom made the broken syllable I had heard in his room days later. This time, the recording was clear enough to understand. He said no. The four of us sat around Tom's kitchen table while the recording continued. No one moved. On the audio, the heart monitor quickened. Derek told Melanie to stamp the page. Lydia returned and asked why Tom's pulse had risen. Vanessa said the prayer had made him emotional. At 4:24, after Lydia adjusted his medication and left again, Derek said, "We got it." Tom's breathing remained in the background. "He said no," Melanie whispered. "He says no to everything when he's hurting," Derek replied. "At 5, he'll thank us." The rest of the file captured only hospital noise and a brief conversation with a dietary aide. At 4:49, the application stopped. Madison stared at the tablet. "My dad heard him." Claire put an arm around her. "Yes. He heard Grandpa say no." There was no gentle version of the answer. "Yes," I said. She ran to the downstairs bathroom and locked the door. Claire followed but did not force her to open it. She sat on the hallway floor and spoke through the wood. She told Madison that adults can do terrible things while still loving their children. She said no child is responsible for repairing a parent's choices. She repeated those words until the crying on the other side became quieter. I carried the tablet to Evelyn's office myself. She placed it in a signal-blocking bag and had a certified digital examiner make an image. The cloud provider later verified that the file had uploaded automatically Tuesday night and had not been modified. The recording was not perfect, but it was complete. By the following afternoon, Derek's lawyers had a copy. Vanessa called me at dusk. "Where is Madison?" she asked. "Safe. You had no right to involve her. She came here because she was afraid her family was lying to her. She stole that tablet. Tom gave it to her. Derek is on his way." I looked through the kitchen window. Claire and Madison were sitting on the back steps. Noah had joined them with 3 glasses of lemonade. Their heads were close together. "Tell him not to come angry," I said. "You don't get to tell us how to parent." "No, but the court gets to tell him not to remove or destroy evidence." Vanessa's breath shook. "You think this is simple? You think he woke up one day and decided to steal a farm? I think he heard his father say no and ordered a notary to stamp the paper. We were going to pay it back. The word we mattered. Did you guide Tom's hand?" She did not answer. "Vanessa, did you move my brother's hand across that deed?" Derek said Tom had agreed before the procedure. He said the medicine made him resist everything. "You were on the recording. You knew what he said. I knew our entire life was about to collapse. So you put the collapse on a dying man." She began crying. "I have to get my daughter." "You can get her. Derek stays in the car. He is her father, and right now she is afraid of him." Derek came anyway. His black pickup stopped so hard beside the house that gravel struck the porch. He crossed the yard before the engine stopped running. Madison stood behind Claire. "Get in the truck," he told her. "Dad, I didn't know what was on it. You took private property and gave it to people suing us. Grandpa gave it to me. It was connected to his business account. You had no right." I stepped off the porch. "The original is preserved. Your lawyers have a copy. This has nothing to do with you. It became my business when Tom named me trustee and put that note in my hand." At the word note, Derek stopped. "What note?" I had not told him the exact message. Melanie knew the time. But Evelyn had kept Tom's receipt out of the public filings while its handwriting was authenticated. "Your father wrote Tuesday, 4/16. Derek's anger drained so quickly it seemed to leave him smaller. "When?" "The night before he died. He couldn't write. He could write 6 letters and 4 numbers. Vanessa had arrived in her car. She stood near the driveway with one hand over her mouth. Derek looked at her, then at the house, the orchard, and his daughter. I saw him understand that the truth had not come from one enemy he could discredit. It had come from his father, his employee, his notary, his nurse, his own daughter, and a device no one knew was listening. "I was trying to save everything," he said. Madison shook her head. "Not him." Those 2 words broke what remained of his certainty. He sat on the edge of the porch and covered his face. For several minutes, nobody spoke. Vanessa stood apart from him. Claire kept an arm around Madison. At last, Derek looked at me. "Do you know what Dad said when I told him Riverbend was in trouble? He offered me a job bagging pecans. I heard the recording. He wanted me to crawl back here so everyone could watch the big developer fail. He wanted to give you a place to stand after you failed. Same thing to him. No, same thing to you." He looked toward the dark rows. He never believed I could build anything. He invested $80,000 because he believed you, and reminded me of it every time I asked for help. Because you never called it help. You called it an opportunity for him. His face hardened again, but weariness held the anger down. "If he had signed before the procedure, none of you would care," he said. He did not. He would have changed his mind. Once he understood the bank deadline, he would have. You stole the chance to find out. So what happens now? You tell the truth and go to prison? I can't promise what follows. Easy answer from the man who loses nothing. I felt Ellie's absence, Tom's empty chair, and 72 years pressing on my back. "I lost my brother while you were holding his wrist," I said. "Do not tell me I lose nothing." Derek looked down. Vanessa took Madison home in her car. Derek drove away alone. The next morning, Vanessa retained separate counsel. Within a week, she gave a sworn statement confirming Melanie's account. She admitted placing her hand over Tom's because Derek said the signature needed to be legible. She turned over text messages in which Derek had sent photographs of Tom's signatures and asked Melanie which one would be easiest to reproduce. She also produced the unedited hospital video. The full recording was 9 minutes long, not the 11 seconds played in court. It began with Derek asking Tom if he wanted the pain to stop. Tom said yes. He asked whether Tom wanted the family protected. Tom said yes again. Then Derek shifted the questions. "You want me to have what I need?" Tom whispered, "Water." Derek gave him a cup and waited. "You want me to do what is necessary to protect Hart Farm?" Tom said, his son's name. "You want me to finish Riverbend and keep the farm in the family?" There was a long pause. Derek moved closer. "Yes?" Tom's faint yes came after Derek asked whether he wanted another sip of water. The short version removed that question and joined the answer to the earlier sentence. It was not sophisticated editing. It did not need to be. Most manipulation succeeds because people hear the story they were prepared to believe. The digital examiner found the cut on Derek's phone and recovered the exported clip. A project file named dad_approval_final had been created at 2:07 the morning after Tom died. Evelyn referred the evidence to the district attorney's elder abuse unit and the state notary commission. Piedmont's counsel made its own criminal referral because bank funds had been obtained through a disputed security deed. The probate court appointed me temporary administrator while Tom's will was admitted. None of those steps felt triumphant. Each arrived as an email or certified letter while ordinary farm work continued. We repaired a pump in the South Grove. Rosa reopened online orders. Claire returned to Augusta during the week and drove back every Friday. Noah learned to use Tom's old label printer. Luis found a buyer for the broken shell pecans that usually went to waste. The trees kept making their slow, indifferent promises. Derek did not come to the farm again. His new lawyers requested mediation before the final deed hearing. Evelyn recommended we attend. "Why bargain when we have the recording?" Claire asked. "Because litigation can take years," Evelyn said. "The bank may appeal. The title insurer may contest coverage. A consent order can clear the land faster. Does he get to demand we stop the criminal case? No, that is not ours to trade." The mediation took place in an office park north of Macon. Derek sat across from us with 2 attorneys. Vanessa was not there. His wedding ring was gone. The mediator carried proposals between rooms for 5 hours. Derek first offered to return the farm if the estate assumed the $680,000 debt and paid him $400,000 for improvements and development value. We declined. He then offered to release the deed if Claire and I signed statements saying the transfer had resulted from misunderstanding, not intentional wrongdoing. We declined. At 3 in the afternoon, he asked to speak with me alone. Evelyn allowed it in the conference room with the glass door, where she could see us. Derek looked as if he had aged 10 years in 6 weeks. His company had filed for bankruptcy. Their Atlanta house was under contract. Vanessa had moved with the children to her sister's home. "The bank is coming after me personally," he said. "You guaranteed Riverbend before the farm was involved. I can never repay it. Bankruptcy exists for people who cannot repay. You say that like starting over is simple. I say it like starting over is possible." He slid a sheet of paper toward me. It was a consent judgment, releasing the farm and admitting the deed was invalid. The paragraph assigning fault had been crossed out. "I will sign this," he said. "No money, no debt to the estate. You get everything you want. The estate gets back what Tom owned. In exchange, tell the prosecutor Dad would not have wanted charges." "Did he tell you that?" "He was my father. He was also the victim." Derek pushed back from the table. "You think a prison sentence fixes this?" "No." "Then help me stay with my children. Your children need a father who accepts what he did, not one more false affidavit." "What am I supposed to say?" "That at 4:16 on Tuesday, your father said no and you continued." He looked through the glass at Evelyn and Claire. "If I admit that, they use it against me. The recording already says it. The only voice missing is yours." For nearly a minute, he sat still. Then he took a pen from the mediator's table. Under the crossed-out paragraph, he wrote in his own hand, "I knew Thomas Hart had not consented at the time the deed was signed. I caused the deed to be notarized and recorded anyway because I believed I could restore the property after completing Riverbend Landing. He signed his name. It was the first honest signature in the entire case. Judge Marsh entered the consent judgment 2 days later. The deed to Hart River Development was canceled. Piedmont released its security interest in the farm and pursued repayment through Derek's bankruptcy and the title insurance claim. Luis removed the chain from the gate and hung it on a nail inside the packing shed, where no one would forget it. Derek's admission did not end the criminal investigation. The district attorney charged him with exploitation of an elder adult, forgery, and making false statements in a financial transaction. Melanie surrendered her commission and pleaded to a lesser notarial offense in exchange for truthful testimony. Vanessa was charged with conspiracy but reached an agreement that required cooperation, restitution, and community service. When the indictment became public, reporters parked outside the farm. I gave one statement. Thomas Hart said no. This family is not celebrating anyone's downfall. We are protecting his choice and continuing his work. Then I went back inside the packing shed and helped Rosa fill Christmas orders. When the reporters left, the farm became painfully ordinary again. There were invoices on Tom's desk, a leaking faucet in the employee washroom, and 3 pallets of shipping cartons that had been delivered in the wrong size. Public scandal had made every decision feel enormous, but grief waited in smaller places. It waited in the half-used roll of peppermints in Tom's truck and the reading glasses beside his bed. Claire and I spent 2 Saturdays sorting the house. We did not call an estate company. Tom would have risen from the grave to complain about strangers putting price stickers on his tools. We made piles on the dining room floor. Keep, donate, farm, and ask the grandchildren. Every object slowed us down. Helen's yellow mixing bowl went to Claire. Our father's pocket knife went to Noah. Madison asked for the wooden field ruler Tom had carried in the grove. Caleb wanted nothing until he found a dented red thermos in the truck, then held it against his chest. In Tom's bedside drawer, beneath prescription receipts, we found a desk calendar from his hospital room. Tuesday's square contained 3 entries. Procedure 2:30. Derek. Bank paper? No. Call Claire myself. The last line had been underlined twice. Claire sat on the edge of the bed with the calendar in her lap. He was going to call, she said. Yes. Why didn't he? There are questions grief asks, even when it knows the answer. Maybe he was too weak after the procedure. Maybe Derek took the phone. Maybe he thought he had another day. I had 6 months. So did I. She looked at me. You saw him every week. And I let Derek tell me what not to ask. That confession had lived in me since the hospital. I told her about my last visit before Tuesday. Tom had tried to ask whether I had heard from her. I misunderstood his broken speech. Or perhaps I understood enough and chose the easier answer. I told him she was probably busy at school. Then I changed the subject to irrigation. I should have called you from the parking lot, I said. Claire closed the calendar. Derek lied to both of us. He did, but I was your uncle before he was our messenger. And I was Dad's daughter before I was the person waiting for permission to come. We sat with that. Accepting another person's deceit did not require us to pretend we had made no mistakes around it. Derek held the greatest responsibility, but blaming him for every silence would have kept us from learning anything. Claire tore no pages from the calendar. She placed the whole thing in the keep box. The following week, we held a meeting with every permanent farm employee. Some expected layoffs. Some thought we would sell the packing business to pay legal bills. I stood in front of 14 people and admitted I did not yet know whether the trust could operate profitably. Tom had left enough cash for 1 season. Not enough for years of poor decisions. The north irrigation replacement would cost nearly $90,000. Online sales were flat. Wholesale margins had narrowed. Derek had lied when he called the farm worthless, but he had not invented every weakness. Luis proposed delaying the north planting. Rosa proposed turning Helen's holiday recipes into small gift tins with higher margins. A mechanic named Ben offered to rebuild the oldest sorting machine instead of replacing it. 2 seasonal supervisors asked for year-round work in exchange for taking over direct market deliveries. No one asked for promises. They asked for truthful numbers. That became our first operating rule. Every quarter, employees would see revenue, major expenses, debt, and reserve targets. Tom had run the farm honestly but privately. Derek had exploited the space between those 2 things. We could protect the land without making mystery part of its management. Mr. Tom would hate everybody knowing what he paid for fertilizer, Rosa said. Mr. Tom is welcome to complain, I told her. The room laughed, and some of the fear left with it. Piedmont's internal review concluded that its loan officer had ignored multiple warnings: the transfer for nominal consideration, Tom's terminal illness, the notary's employment by the borrower, and an appraisal ordered by Derek. The bank did not accuse its employee of joining the fraud, but it terminated him for bypassing underwriting controls. The title insurer repaid the advanced funds, then filed its claim in Derek's bankruptcy. The estate did not assume the $680,000 debt. That outcome mattered because it prevented the farm from becoming responsible for money it never received. It did not make the loss disappear. Insurers, banks, and contractors carried parts of it. Several small contractors recovered only a percentage through bankruptcy. Evelyn reminded me that stopping a fraudulent loan after money moves rarely restores every person to where he began. I wrote letters to the 4 Riverbend contractors who had also done legitimate work at the farm. I could not pay Derek's debt from trust funds, but I could tell them the evidence showed they had not participated in the scheme. 2 later bid on farm repairs. 1 declined and said he never wanted to hear the Hart name again. I understood. In November, Evelyn presented her first legal invoice to the trust. I stared at the total long enough for her to become annoyed. "You hired me to save 140 acres, she said. "Litigation costs more than coffee. Your coffee should reduce the bill." She almost smiled. Then she pointed to a credit at the bottom. Her firm had written off 1/3 of its time. "Tom paid every invoice I sent for 20 years, she said, usually after calling to object to it. "Consider that my contribution to the harvest." I approved the bill. That evening, I locked the packing shed and walked to my truck through the cold. The office light was still on. For an instant, I expected to see Tom bent over his desk, frowning at freight charges. Grief often offered those small illusions, never long enough to comfort. I went back inside and turned off the lamp. The first Christmas without Tom came too quickly. For 40 years, he had stood at the end of the packing line during December, slipping an extra handful of pecans into boxes for customers who had ordered from us before the internet existed. He claimed the scale was inaccurate. Rosa claimed Tom was the inaccurate one. That year, we left an empty stool near the tape machine and put his red work cap on it. Orders were stronger than anyone expected. Some people bought because of the newspaper story, which embarrassed me. Most bought because Rosa called old customers and because Claire redesigned the catalog with photographs Helen had taken years earlier. Luis negotiated a better shipping contract. Noah learned enough about the website to save us from paying a consultant. The farm did not suddenly become rich. The North Grove needed new irrigation. Insurance premiums rose. A late frost damaged young trees. Honest assets often look unimpressive beside imagined fortunes. They require work after the applause ends. Tom's will was admitted to probate in January. The trust received the restored land, the packing business, and his remaining savings. Claire and Derek held equal beneficial interests, just as Tom had planned. Neither could force a sale. A spendthrift clause kept Derek's bankruptcy creditors from taking trust property, but any income owed to him could be directed toward court-ordered restitution. Educational and medical expenses for Madison and Caleb could be paid directly by the trustee. Some people told me Derek should receive nothing. "Disinherit him," a retired grower said at breakfast. He tried to steal the whole thing. But the will was Tom's decision, not a weapon I could reshape after his death. He had known his son was desperate when he signed it. He had protected the farm from Derek without erasing Derek from the family. My job was to carry out that distinction. At the first annual trustee meeting, Claire voted to retain Luis as general manager and Rosa as operations director. I approved both. We established a reserve for repairs and a modest education account for all 3 grandchildren, including Noah. When Derek's lawyer asked for a cash advance to help with his criminal defense, I denied it under the trust terms. "That will look personal," Evelyn warned. "Is it lawful?" "Yes. Defense costs are not support, health, or education." Then the answer is no. Quiet justice is not softness. It is the discipline of making the same decision even when anger would enjoy it for the wrong reason. Derek remained free on bond for 7 months. He lived in a small apartment outside Marietta and worked for a commercial roofing company owned by a former subcontractor. His real estate license was suspended. Vanessa filed for divorce but allowed him regular visits with the children under a counselor's supervision. Madison came to the farm twice a month. At first, she avoided talking about her father. She worked beside Claire in the farm store and drove the utility cart with more speed than Luis approved. Caleb came less often. He believed we had taken his house and put his father on television. When he did visit, he stayed close to Noah and asked when the legal case would be over. Not all consequences end on the same day, I told him. Will Dad go to prison? He may. Do you want him to? That question came from a 12-year-old, but every adult in the family had asked it in one form or another. I want your father to tell the truth and accept a fair consequence, I said. Wanting a person held responsible is not the same as wanting him destroyed. Caleb kicked at the dirt. Mom says Grandpa would forgive him. Your grandfather loved him. Forgiveness and consequences can sit at the same table. That sounds like an old person answer. It is. He almost smiled. In March, Derek agreed to plead guilty to exploitation and 1 count of forgery. The false statement charge was dismissed as part of the agreement. Prosecutors recommended 30 months in state custody, followed by probation and restitution. Vanessa's cooperation spared her prison, but she accepted 5 years of probation and 200 hours of service with an elder law nonprofit. Melanie received probation, lost her notary commission, and paid a fine. No agreement made the facts feel fair. Tom remained dead. Claire could not recover the last 6 months of phone calls. Madison had become the person who carried evidence against her father. Luis and Rosa had spent weeks believing their livelihoods could be locked behind a chain. The law could cancel a deed. It could not restore the hours stolen around it. 2 weeks before sentencing, Derek asked me to visit him. He was not in jail yet. We met at a public park halfway between Macon and Atlanta, where a walking path circled a small lake. He sat at a picnic table in a gray work shirt, with the roofing company's name over the pocket. I start at 6 every morning now, he said. Dad would appreciate that. He appreciated more things than you believed. He looked across the water. My lawyer says I should prepare a statement for sentencing. He says it needs to show remorse without admitting anything beyond the plea. That sounds like a lawyer's statement. I don't know what remorse is supposed to sound like. It is not a sound. He rubbed his hands together. The palms were rougher than I remembered. I keep hearing the recording, he said. Not the part everyone heard. The noise after. His breathing. I waited. At the time, I told myself he was saying no to pain. He had refused water, food, nurses, everything. I decided his no meant whatever allowed me to continue. You decided before he said it. Yes. That was the first time he admitted it without a document in front of him. Why the video at 5:30? I asked. He picked at a splinter in the picnic table. I needed something that sounded like permission. By then I knew Melanie was scared. I knew the bank might ask questions. I thought if Dad said yes to enough things, one of them could be used. And after he died, I watched the full video. I knew it was useless, so I cut it. Before or after you cried beside his bed? His eyes filled. After. That answer was worse and more human than I wanted. I did love him, Derek said. I know. Do Claire and Madison? They know you loved him. They also know what you did. Everyone acts like those things cannot both be true. They can. Love is not evidence of innocence. He looked down at the work boots he had once mocked Tom for wearing to town. I spent my whole life trying not to become him, he said. He measured everything in sacrifice. Every meal came with a story about the frost of 1983 or Grandpa's debt. I wanted Madison and Caleb to grow up without feeling that every dollar had dirt under it. So you taught them every dollar had debt behind it? I know. Do you? He nodded. We walked once around the lake. Derek told me Riverbend would be sold by the bankruptcy trustee to another builder. The sale might repay part of the contractors and bank, but his investors would lose most of their money. His Atlanta house had closed with almost no equity. Vanessa intended to return to work as a dental hygienist. Madison wanted to study agricultural engineering, though she had not told him yet. She thinks I will call it small, he said. Will you? No. Tell her. At the parking lot, he handed me an envelope for Claire. Read it first if you want. I won't. You don't trust me. Trust is not required for me to respect her mail. He gave a short, sad laugh. That sounds like Dad. No. It sounds like a retired recorder who knows tampering with people's messages brought us here. His smile disappeared. I am sorry about that too. Tell Claire. It's in the letter. Then be prepared to tell her again when she can look at you. At sentencing, the courtroom was full. Derek pleaded guilty in a voice so low the judge asked him to repeat the words. Vanessa sat behind her attorney. Madison and Caleb sat between Claire and me. I had offered to keep them away, but Madison said she was tired of adults deciding which truths children could survive. The prosecutor played no audio. The facts had been submitted in writing. Derek read a statement that did not blame the bank, his father, medication, Riverbend, or fear. My father said no, he told the judge. I treated his weakness as an obstacle and my desperation as permission. I involved my wife, pressured an employee, deceived my sister, and asked my uncle to lie. I cannot return the days I took from my father and Claire. I can only stop arguing with the truth. Judge Marsh imposed the agreed sentence. She allowed Derek to surrender the following Monday so he could speak with his children privately. Your conduct was not a single impulsive act, she said. It was a sequence of choices, followed by efforts to make others carry them. Your eventual admission matters. It does not erase the sequence. Madison cried when the hearing ended. Caleb pressed his face into my jacket. Derek was permitted to hug them before he left with his lawyer. When he reached Claire, he stopped several feet away. I wrote you, he said. I read it. I don't expect you to forgive me. Good, she said, because expectation is how you turned every relationship into a debt. He absorbed that without defending himself. Will you bring them to see me? He asked. When they want to go, not when you need them to prove you are still their father. He nodded. Then Claire stepped forward and embraced him. It lasted only a few seconds. It was not pardon. It was not reconciliation. It was a sister saying goodbye before her brother went somewhere difficult, while refusing to pretend the difficulty had arrived by accident. I think Tom would have understood. The first full harvest under the trust came that October. The trees produced better than forecast, and the packing shed ran 6 days a week. We rehired every seasonal worker who wanted to return. Claire arranged for a local school to tour the grove. Luis pretended to dislike the children until they discovered he carried peppermint candy in his pockets. Madison spent weekends mapping irrigation pressure for a science project. Caleb learned to drive the old orchard truck in first gear. Noah painted new signs for the farm store. Watching the 3 grandchildren work together did not make the family whole. Whole was no longer available. It made the family honest enough to build something different. We held a small memorial for Tom on the anniversary of his death. No reporters, no lawyers, no polished eulogies. We gathered beneath the oldest pecan tree near the house. Rosa brought peach cobbler. Evelyn brought coffee, as weak as the coffee in her office. Even Melanie sent a letter, though I left it sealed for Claire and the children to decide whether to read. Derek participated by telephone from the prison education unit. The call was limited to 15 minutes. He told Madison he was proud of her irrigation project and asked Caleb about baseball. He apologized to Luis and Rosa. When my turn came, there were only 90 seconds remaining. Uncle Sam, he said, is the red cap still on the stool? I looked through the open packing shed door. Tom's cap had faded in the sun, but no one had moved it. Still there. Good. Your father would not want it turning to dust. Maybe let Caleb wear it at harvest. I'll ask him. The recorded voice announced 30 seconds. Thank you for not taking the farm away from my kids, Derek said. That was your father's instruction. He thought of them even then. He thought of you, too. The line went quiet. I wish I had believed that, he said before the call ended. At 4:16 that afternoon, I walked alone to Tom's office. The note was no longer in Evelyn's evidence cabinet. After the case closed, she returned it to me in a clear archival sleeve. I kept it in the top drawer of Tom's desk beside the brass key. Tuesday, 4:16. The writing looked even smaller than I remembered. 6 letters, 4 numbers, and the last strength of a man refusing to let someone else define his choice. For months, I had thought the note was about a crime. Later, I thought it was about a deed. Standing in that office, I understood that Tom had given me something more difficult than evidence. He had given me permission to disrupt the peace. People my age are often praised for keeping families together. What that sometimes means is swallowing questions, accepting explanations from the loudest child, and calling silence dignity. I had done that when Derek told me Claire wanted nothing to do with her father. I had done it when I let him manage every hospital decision because he seemed capable. I had mistaken avoiding conflict for wisdom. Tom's note forced me to ask what happened at a specific time. Once I asked, every comfortable story began to fail. Claire had not abandoned him. The farm had not been freely transferred. Derek's success had not made him secure. His care for his father had not given him ownership of his father's will. And love, however real, had not turned no into yes. I placed the note back in the drawer and carried Tom's red cap outside. Caleb was helping Luis load crates onto a trailer. I held the cap out to him. "Your father said your granddad would want you to wear this." He looked at it as if I had handed him something holy. Then he put it on. The cap was too large and dropped over one eyebrow. "How do I look?" he asked. "Like a boy who has work to do." He grinned and ran toward the truck. The sun lowered over the western pasture Derek had once wanted to divide into luxury lots. Long shadows crossed the grass, but the land itself remained open. In the grove, the trees moved together in the evening wind, their leaves making the dry, steady sound I had heard since childhood. Claire came to stand beside me. "Do you ever wish you had signed?" she asked. "Never. Even knowing what happened to Derek?" "Especially knowing. Signing would not have saved him. It would only have allowed the lie to grow large enough to bury all of us." She slipped her arm through mine. "Dad knew you would understand. Not immediately. He knew you would keep looking." We watched the children work until the light turned gold across the orchard. For most of my life, I had thought age brought certainty. What it actually brought was a longer record of being wrong and, if a man was fortunate, less fear of admitting it. I had been wrong about Claire. I had been wrong to confuse Derek's competence with character. I had even been wrong about Tom, believing his stubbornness meant he would always have time to correct his own mistakes. None of us had been granted that time. The only choice left was what we did with the truth after it reached us. I thought of Ellie then. During our 46 years of marriage, she often told me that listening was not the same as waiting quietly. Real listening required a person to be changed by what he heard. Tom had said no once in a hospital room and again on a scrap of paper. At last, I had listened well enough to change what came next. I no longer believed justice arrived in a courtroom or in the moment a guilty man confessed. Those were important moments, but they were only gates. Justice was what came after. Luis checking the irrigation each morning, Rosa signing paychecks, Claire answering her niece's calls, Derek speaking honestly to his children from a place he had earned the right to leave only with time. It was a farm kept intact without pretending the family was unbroken. It was a boundary that did not require hatred. It was an old man learning that peace built on silence is only quiet harm. My brother had used his final strength to mark 1 minute in one terrible afternoon. At 4:16 on Tuesday, his son tried to take his name away from him. Tom took it back with a hospital receipt.